Our next guest is an up-and-coming cruiserweight who hails from the UK, but is quickly making a name for himself in the States. Many fans know him for his impressive social media following, while others may have seen him in the ring and in action on a Mayweather promotions card.
Welcome to Title Unboxed. With more than 40 years of experience in the fight game, our host, Doug Ward, will be covering every corner of the ring as we get comfortable between the ropes. We'll talk with both the lesser-knowns and the legends, discuss boxing's rich history and current state of the game. We'll also look at today's latest innovations, equipment breakdowns, and insights you won't uncover anywhere else. Join us now as we take a look inside Title Unboxed.
Viddal, so good to see you. Welcome to Title Unboxed.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm surprised you didn't have me on sooner.
Well, we wanted to let things boil a little bit, you know?
That's always the way.
Let it steep. So I want to jump right in, but I want to try to set the stage for this conversation because your history and current situation is unique. And that's, I think because of it, you'll have a lot to share with everybody, with our viewers and listeners and, young fighters starting out.
Mm-hmm.
So the layout of your career, you started as an amateur boxer.
Yes.
Then you became KSI's trainer.
Yes.
Grew a large social media following from that.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're a professional fighter.
Yes.
So I want to lay that out there because this will come back around to how that plays out. And I think you know where I'm going with it.
Okay.
But let's start as an amateur. When did you get into the sport? How did you get into it? And what was your career like as an amateur?
So, in the UK, I know it's a lot smaller than the US, but my dad used to fight. He didn't get to, a level significant enough for me to brag about, but he did learn the sport, and through his, through the loopholes he fell into, he used me as the person to say, don't go that way, do this, don't do that, so he's been a guide from the beginning. And that really started properly at 6 years old, when I started going to the boxing gym. Between the ages of 6 and 10, I was on and off with it. As a kid, it's hard to maintain focus on one thing. You don't know who you want to be. You don't know what you want to do.
Yeah.
It's hard to force someone to get punched in the face weekly and like it. So I guess at 11 years old is when you're eligible to enter the national tournaments.
Right.
And that's when I started having my fights. And then at 12 years old, the first national tournament that I entered, I won. And that's where it started. And throughout a 10-year amateur career, I won the English title. So England, I won that 5 times, I believe. And then I won the Great Britain Championship, which is Scotland, Wales, and England. I won that 3 times. So in total, over here, we would class that as 8 national championships.
Yeah.
And through my domestic success, I represented Team England and Team GB, where I won international medals and qualified for the Youth Olympics as well. So it was quite an extensive amateur pedigree I've been fortunate to achieve. Hard work as well. And then there was kind of this period where the transition of turning pro. So towards the end of my amateur career, I fell out of love with boxing again, and I wasn't too sure if I was going to continue doing it, to be fair. But then after watching the competition around, I thought, these are people I can beat. These are people that are getting very far, not using the level of skill I believe they should have, to be in their position. So I said, that's it, I'm coming back. I need to set this straight. I need to sort my life out and get back on track. So I did.
But boxing does that for you.
Yeah. I had a rough ending to my amateur career because I lost in the senior national championships.
Yep.
And the guy that beat me, I had another fight with him. He's part of the UK Army, the British Army. So they had like an Army versus Team England. And I lost to him again. So I lost my last 2 amateur fights to the same guy. And I was looking at it like, wow, you know, this guy's ahead of me now to go to the Olympics, and the Olympics is the ultimate goal for an amateur. And it was looking difficult to achieve. I wouldn't say it was impossible. I would have just had to make sure there was no more hiccups.
Right.
But during that time, to link back into your question, I met KSI.
Yeah.
I was training KSI at the time, developing a little bit of a following, getting a little buzz going. Like, who's this guy? You know, everyone looks at a boxing trainer, expects to see this guy with wrinkles that's been in the sport for 40 years. And then here comes this 19-year-old, like, I'm training him, so let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
And through traveling to Vegas with him when he had a session with Floyd Mayweather Sr., I managed to meet Jeff Mayweather and Amir Abdullah, who said, this guy is talented. He's not like the YouTube guy, like he can actually fight. Jeff defended me and said, no, man, like this guy's not like them. He can fight. Amir trusts Jeff's word, and they took a chance and said, turn pro with us and we'll make sure you're okay.
Yeah.
And
you actually had a sparring session in front of them, right? When in KSI's camp, when you took him there, when you were there with him?
Yes, so I had a sparring session. Which was the eye opener, and Amir wasn't there to see it, but Jeff cornered me for that spot.
Yeah.
And that's when, you know, Jeff said to Amir, get this guy, make him turn pro now. And that's the decision I made. We're now 4 fights in, 4 wins, 2 knockouts. Managed to fight on a Pacquiao and Broner undercard.
Yep.
Managed to have my own main event in Dubai. And every single fight, I've stepped in the ring with title shorts and title boots. So I would say that
love that about you.
We've got a little bit of luck going on right now.
Right.
I think I have to stay with the same kit, otherwise things could go left.
But that relationship with you and Amir Abdullah, who's a former ISK kickboxing champion, Jeff Mayweather, who everybody knows from the Mayweather legacy, it's a good team. What is it that makes that so cohesive from the start? That you guys just work so well together. It looks like you have fun in camp. You make it light and entertaining, and get the work done at the same time.
I think Jeff is very similar to me. We have a very similar energy. You know, we know the sport of boxing is a serious game, but why do you have to walk around with a screw face every day just because you're doing it? You know, so I feel like Jeff had that approach, which made me very comfortable and made me feel like, you're just like me. Like you love the sport of boxing. You're in the sport for how many years, but you don't have to be a screw face, mean guy to be a part of it. And I think that made our relationship grow. And with Amir, he was the guy who has put me in these positions. You know, he's put me in a position where I can promote myself and market myself as a fighter and get on big shows and have some opportunity and exposure as a professional fighter. And that's something that I couldn't have done this far without him. So, it just makes a very good team.
Well, part of what I think makes Amir so good is because of his breadth of experience. You know, he was a fighter. He did that. He's promoted shows. He did that. He's managed guys. He advises guys. So he comes at it from a lot of different angles, and especially from the fighter's perspective, because he has that experience.
Yes, and that's important because he can know how you're feeling at certain times, and his experience allows him to be diverse. So. And diversity is, the key to survival. Being able to adapt is the key to survival. So to have someone who has experience in multiple fields definitely helps with that.
Right. And how was your first experience with Jeff in terms of the Doom session? How did you fare in that?
Well,
the famous Doom session.
Jeff can't do me. He knows that he can't do me. And I'll say the same thing to him every time I see him. Like, you can't. The Doom session doesn't apply to me. But he did try it, and to say that he's never hit me with the pad is a lie. He's definitely got a few dooms in, but the way he's outweighed now by his misses and his lengths. But it was great hopping on the pads of him. It made me very defensively aware. It made me realize, just catching certain shots on the elbows. It took away some bad habits of how I used to use my hands for my defense. and things that I know I will hold on to for the rest of my career, because it is valuable defensive information. And I feel like that's what I gained the most working with Jeff early as well, was just like, wow, I really am open. You know, let's tighten this up. Let's learn how to, you know, just roll a punch, and very, very intricate. And I appreciate that, because I do have an eye for detail.
Yeah, he's fantastic about working a good blend of offense and defense, and isn't necessarily weighed towards one or the other.
And that's what it is. You know, he's a much smaller person than me, so it's not going to be power blasting training if me and him are on the pads.
Right.
So I think with that being said, as much as we are getting the counters off, it's not about that. With him, it's about the awareness. It's the reading of situations and like pre-planning of what's going to happen, instead of me having to full power my way through. But I'm not really learning anything that way. That's what we use the heavy bag for. And when I train with Otis as well, Pimpleton Jr., we use him because I'm not going to knock him over. So
Otis is great too. I'm gonna keep that soundbite though, because I'm gonna show it to Jeff later, and I'm gonna see what his rebuttal is. Because I'll bet knowing Jeff, he's gonna be like, "Oh, Jeff will argue."
He'll be on a plane here. He'll be on a plane here with the pads, throwing them at me. But that's fine. I need to see him anyway. So let's lure him into it.
Well, you mentioned Amir talking about your marketability and him able to play into that and understand the value of that. And that's something you come into this sport. And also I wanted to establish the fact that you, unlike some of these guys that are fighting right now, not knocking them, they're making their living doing this, but you did come from a healthy, decorated amateur background. So you have a little bit of a different perspective and bring a little bit more to the table than, you know, a Logan Paul, a Jake Paul, these guys that are just starting late in the game.
Yeah, you know, Logan Paul and Jake Paul are babies in the game of boxing. They're babies in the game of boxing, but they're the most experienced when it comes to marketing and how to build a brand and make sure whatever I do, you pay attention. Yeah. And with that imbalance, it allows them to start off their career not in a small hall show, but to the world, because people are already following them. But because of my amateur experience, I know amateur boxing and pro boxing is not the same, but it's still, you know, a way of living and ingrained very deeply into my brain through the years of practice, which is why I can't be put in the same category as them. Right. But in terms of caring about having a brand outside of the ring, I can learn from them. I can take from them. And in terms of in the ring, they would obviously be able to take things from me. So this is what people need to focus on. What can I take from them? What can I learn from them? What are they doing that I'm not doing? And I do look at those guys in that way, because they are great at marketing. And anyone that hates on them or doesn't respect it is because they're not a part of it.
Right. If they're in there getting one of those paydays, they're going to be all about it.
Look, there's guys out there. We know, man, boxing's a tough sport. There's guys out there getting their tooth punched out for nothing. Yeah. For near nothing. You know, there's people really fighting every other week and still can't get the paydays that these guys get. So, you know, I can understand why people get envious and people feel a certain type of way, especially if they've been grinding a lot longer. But you can't dismiss that for the past 8 to 10 years, these guys have been building a following to be in this position. If you don't dismiss that, then you won't envy them, because they have been putting in the work in another field. Yeah. You know?
You mentioned being lumped into that category. Does that bother you? Do you feel like that mentally sometimes you feel like, okay, I got to prove something here?
Yeah. I feel like I don't have to prove to anyone that I'm not a part of that community, because that will be done by itself. Sure. But what I do want to prove is that I can become a world champion. And my supporters, my family, yourself, Amir, Jeff, with what you've seen, the prediction that I can be a world champion is often heard. 100%. And I want to prove to myself that for all these years, everyone said you can do it, that I can do it. and I will be a world champion. I feel like that's what I care about, and that's what I'm focusing on trying to prove. Not that I'm better than KSI, Jake, and Logan. No, that's whatever, man. Like, people will know that. And I always say, if I wasn't better than them, I wouldn't have been a coach to that community. I would have been fighting on those shows.
That's true.
So for me to be coaching them says everything that needs to be said, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you look at it from that perspective.
Yeah.
Well, and you touched on it, and I think it's true that Amir and Jeff probably wouldn't have thrown you on a big stage like an undercard of that magnitude had you not had the YouTube experience, having had those followers, been used to being in front of people, comfortable, having a large audience watch you from the start.
Yeah, I think I give credit to my team for acknowledging I'm ready for those stages, and I don't need to really be babied around it.
Right.
And I give the most credit to my mum in this case, because as much as my dad made sure my boxing skills were up to par, my mum made sure I know how to speak, carry myself, and be comfortable in front of people. And I feel like as much as I put a lot of work in myself, the base of where, my ability to speak, express myself, and be myself stems from my mum. And I have to give her credit for that.
Well, that's so important. I mean, you look at the guys that really stood out in the game, the Muhammad Alis, the Sugar Ray Leonards. I mean, those guys were well-spoken. They were intelligent. They were able to express themselves in a way that resonated with everybody.
Yeah, and that always
fans.
makes the difference. That always makes the difference. We can look at, one of the best fighters, if not the best fighter in the world now, Canelo Alvarez.
Yeah.
He's now saying, you know what, I'm going to learn English. I'm going to start speaking English, because he realizes that's how he's going to cross over.
Yeah.
That's going to take him from not only being the best boxer in the world, but being a global, worldwide athlete like the LeBron James, like the Cristiano Ronaldos, the Lionel Messis, the Tiger Woods, to get into that category, Floyd Mayweather. Yeah. To get into that category, you need to have something outside of your elite skill. And we're starting to see Canelo now in his prime become more of a personality.
Yeah.
It's the modern day world, and being extremely good at boxing isn't enough anymore. And we're still in that wave where it's transitioning between being acceptable to have a life outside of boxing and everything you post being a hit on the heavy bag or a shadow boxing pose. We're kind of in that transition. In the next 10 years, we'll look back at it and it'll just be normal.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it's definitely evolving, and this is going to play a huge role in that. Whether celebrity boxing and that kind of promotion as exhibitions stick around or not, I don't know that they will. At some point, people may get tired of watching a fight that's not being judged, but it is going to impact the sport in as far as the way shows are promoted, the way fighters are promoted.
100%. Like, even now, you're seeing Tank and Mario Barrios are fighting this weekend. And there's been live performances announced on the show.
Yeah.
Normally, this is not something that's very common in boxing to see. Normally, fighters will walk out with an artist, but not actually give them their own section on the show to perform.
Right.
These are things that we've seen Triller implement. We've seen it rarely used in the UK with Eddie Hearn. We saw it last week when Gib had his fight on the Social Gloves event, this YouTubers versus TikTok event. And now we're seeing it on Tank's show where there's going to be live performances. So the traditional world are starting to take little things and say, no, we're going to make this a real night out for the fans. We're going to make this an event for the fans. It's not going to be fighter in, fighter out, fighter in, fighter out. We're going to make sure they go into a show. And that's what the YouTubers and the social media guys, or whatever you want to call them, the influencers, they know how to create a show. And if we got the elite skilled fighters and take the elements of being able to create a show, I feel like all the love will go back into the traditional sport, because what was missing, where people are going other avenues to find, will now be with us. And on top of it, you're going to get the high level fights that you've always seen.
Well, I think that's part of the knock on this is people are saying, well, these things are popular right now because the guys aren't fighting each other. You know, Tank is not fighting Ryan Garcia.
Right.
Devin Haney isn't fighting. You know, it goes on. This goes on and on.
Yes.
And I think there's probably some truth to that. You know, if you're not going to make the big money fights that the fans want to see, you're going to get something else.
Well, we went through a long period of where we was in the shadows of MMA and we was in the shadows of the UFC because Dana White can make whatever fight he wants and you fight whoever he tells you to. Boxing is much more of a free world. And sometimes we don't get the fights that we desire.
Yep.
And as fight fans and as people who, not even fight fans, people who like to witness competition.
Yeah.
Period. Just competition. We want to watch fights and we're not sure on who's going to win.
Yeah.
And I feel like if we're not provided with that often enough, we will lose interest. We're definitely getting back there. Boxing is definitely getting back there. But we still got a bit to go, and that can be down to how many belts are out there nowadays, and quite a few elements that play a factor, networks and promoters. And once we can really get over that wave and everything can become, no matter what network you're on and stuff like that, you can just find an agreement, make the fights happen.
Yeah.
Boxing will be flying again as high as it can be.
Well, again, hopefully that's the impact it'll have on boxing. Maybe that's why we're seeing Wilder and Fury and Spence and Pacquiao. I mean, maybe not the guys that you or I would maybe necessarily want to see fight each other, but the hardcore boxing fans, but they're still good fights.
Very good fights. Fights that were easy to make from being with the same promotion and whatnot. Right. To be fair, Fury and Wilder are not on the same promotion. That is a cross promotion, and that proves that it can be done.
Yeah.
Because we got a top rank in PBC. Yeah. And it shows, okay, these guys are fighting and it's a cross promotion. So then people become confused when it doesn't happen more often because clearly it can be a thing.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be, it's going to be telling for boxing to see that they learn from this and implement it and move forward in a way that's more fan friendly and fighter friendly, promotion friendly, you know?
Agreed. Agreed. So it's definitely going to be there.
So we've got a lot of young fighters starting out there. We've got TikTok, we've got Instagram, we've got Facebook. So I know it's hard to boil it all down and probably not even feasible in this kind of format, but what should a young coming fighter do to set themselves apart, to play off of that social media, to leverage it to its full capacity so that they are more marketable as an individual fighter, to the promoter, to boxing managers, and to fans?
Well, number one, very good question as well, actually. Number one, be a good fighter. Don't let this stuff, don't let everything else cloud what the base of what you do is. Like, I know that I could get 1 million followers and 10 million subscribers on YouTube. They're not coming to see me lose.
Yeah.
They're not coming to see me underperform. So before you start to have to deal with the pressures of having an audience who are expecting things from you, make sure you got the skills to deliver.
Yeah.
So that's definitely number one. Second of all, don't make everything on your socials or, whatever about boxing, because there's only a small population out there that really care about boxing outside of the fight night. Most people don't even watch undercards when going to a boxing show.
Right.
They rock up just before the main event. Now, if you're on the undercard, you've got a personality. People have seen you on socials, they've seen you, and they see you on the show. They might go, you know what, this guy, he's always talking quite a bit online. Let me see if he can actually fight.
Right.
Then you made sure that your skills are good.
Yeah.
Guess what? You now developing a fan base.
Yeah, otherwise they're going to write you off. So they'll be like,
otherwise, they will go to your undercard fight because you talk a lot online, see that you can't fight, and end up hating you because you talk too much anyway. So, you got the thing that all young fighters have to remember is it all starts with the skills and it all ends with the skills. But in the meantime, there are other aspects that are important, and that is to show yourself, for being yourself. Make a character if you want to make a character. Personally, that don't work for me. I'm not too good at acting. But if you can make a persona that people fall in love with, do that. Just make sure people are talking about you and try and make sure it's positive. Sometimes negative works too.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, you know what the old line is: the only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about.
Yes, being irrelevant, being completely
yeah.
not even part of anyone's mind. That's the worst place you can be.
Number 2 is interesting. I want to expound on that a little bit. So you say post something besides just boxing. So, for instance, if that person has a special skill other than boxing or an interest or something like that, that would be the kind of thing that you would say, hey, you know, focus on that once in a while. Show people how to cook.
Listen,
if you have a little bit of a cooking skill.
If you can cook. If you like singing but you're not good at singing, sing, because people find it funny that you can't. Just show that you're not always in the gym. You don't sleep with boxing gloves on. You know, you do have a life, and we know that everyone has a life. So just show us a little bit of it, and, you know, if it's interesting enough, we'll want to see more of it.
Yeah.
So it really does it is a really individual thing. If you haven't got the personality for it, then, you know, forcing it might come across worse.
Sure.
But if you've got it in you naturally, or you've got the acting side in you, activate it, because it will help you in the long run.
What can a young fighter do to increase traffic to his social media channels? What did you do besides the KSI Alliance? Were there things you did that said, okay, if I want to drive traffic, here's some things I can do? They're just basic.
Consistency, consistent content. It is a game of probability. There is obviously algorithms and, you know, boring stuff, tech stuff. But at the base of it all, if you're not uploading, you are not being seen. If you're not posting, you're not being seen. If you want to be seen 20 times a day, post 20 times a day. If that's what you desire, you got to match the attention you're trying to get.
Yep.
You can't put out one video here and one snap there and one post here and expect everyone to stop and check for you. It's not going to happen. You have to force yourself to be seen. And that can be done using TikTok, that can be done using Instagram, and also within those apps to use what you can see the app are pushing. So at the moment, if Instagram are pushing, they're pushing IG Reels. So your Reel views, even though you got like 500 followers, you might be able to get 8K on your Reel because Instagram are pushing those because they're trying to compete with TikTok. So you got to know what the app are trying to push, what they are trying to make people explore. And once you find it, dive into it. And that's why a lot of TikTokers have had success, because they put a lot of money into exposing creators who don't already have a following. Yeah,
that's great advice. Well, we talked about, this is something you mentioned briefly, but I think it stands to be talked about more, because I guess it's a topic of conversation I have with a lot of fighters and just guys behind the scenes, the managers, those guys, you know, and that's creating a brand out of Viddal Riley or ABC up and coming fighter that you can carry with you through your boxing career, have it benefit your boxing career, but then also provide you some sort of a platform for life after boxing. Because there is that life after boxing, whether guys want to come to terms with that and know that it's reality, there will be a life after boxing for every fighter. Yeah, I think the fighters who accept that, the sooner fighters accept that, the better decisions they'll make in their career. And the sooner they realize that, the more chance they have to save and invest and have a plan. If you believe that you can fight forever and you love the sport so much and you're never going to leave, you might treat your finances the same way. You might treat your body the same way. You might not invest and maneuver yourself in the same way because you can't picture yourself doing anything else. I can picture myself with a life after boxing already. And I'm at the beginning of my career. So it allows me throughout my career to maneuver in a space that has me ready for post-boxing. Right. And fighters, that's where it all begins. You got to have a bigger vision. Otherwise, you don't know what you're doing and you don't know where you're heading to achieve it. Right. You got to keep that big picture perspective. Big picture perspective, always. It's hard. It is hard. We all can get in our feelings and shut down. But
it's normal. It's
Yeah.
normal. We all
Yeah.
do it. I do
Yeah.
it. But then at the base, and when you come back to your normal train of thought, you need to go back to big picture thinking.
Yeah. So I know you were slated to fight on a couple of big cards that happened here
Yeah.
recently with Tyson and Jones, and then more recent than that, the Logan Paul and Floyd Mayweather fight, and those fell through for
Yeah.
various reasons. You couldn't get back to the States and all that. That's got to be a little bit frustrating. But what do you see your next fight? You got an idea of when your next fight's going to be?
I don't have an idea right now of when it will be. I know it will be in the UK. I'm hoping to make title boxing big over here.
Yeah.
Just letting you know that.
I love it. We got we're aligned
not,
with the new brand over there called Geezers, and they distribute all of our stuff in the UK.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I know about Geezers.
Yeah.
This is the thing, all right? There's no fighter in the UK that is attracting any sort of attention that wears title.
Really?
And I would like to be a pioneer to do that.
I love it.
I don't know when that will be. And you got a beautiful kit waiting for me. That's the favorite. That's my favorite one so far.
The gloves.
I can't wait to. I can't wait to wear it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when, but missing out on the last couple of opportunities hurt more. That was because of injury. And it hurts more because I haven't been able to be active immediately after recovering. Yeah. I've recovered, and then there's been like a gap between when I can actually get in the ring. But I will be back soon, and I feel like this is giving me a time to look at what's going on, see the landscape, not being involved in it. And once I go back in, everyone's just going to have to clear the space and wish that I'm back inactive again.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
I like it. So what brands, what projects you got going on now that you're aligned with that you're excited about?
So I'm an ambassador for My Protein, which is UK, started off in the UK, but it's worldwide now.
Oh, really?
It's like a Optimum Nutrition. It's like in the same category as Gymshark. It's working its way to that level worldwide. UK, they've already achieved that. But
awesome.
They sponsor Israel Adesanya as well, who, as we know, UFC middleweight champion. So I've been to be under that brand. I know there's a lot of room for growth. Also working with Pure Oxygen, which is a new water formula that's been created, and I exclusively drink their water. So great. I feel like I've been getting some results of it. That's lovely.
Cool.
I've done some work with MLB as well. I never thought I'd be doing work with Major League Baseball, but I've been doing some work with them. So outside of the ring, I'm always getting great opportunities and an opportunity to showcase myself. And that's what allows me to have this absence from the ring and not worry too much. And that's another thing fighters should think about. You don't want to be only making money when you're getting punched in the face. You want to be able to make and create a living for yourself outside of the ring. And when you get into the ring, it's just a top up onto the lifestyle that you really can make for yourself. So no, I'm in a good place, but I can't wait to get back in the ring. Everything else is great, but I'm not a social media guy from 6 years old. I'm a boxer. So I'm craving what I've been doing my whole life, and that's to get back in the ring.
Well, I know we at Tidal and many of our viewers and listeners that are familiar with what we've done with you so far. We're excited to see the next step. How do people follow you, Viddal? Before we wrap up here, what are your channels they should be tuning into and watching your next announcements?
If you want to see me talking nonsense and being funny, then you can follow me on Twitter at isitreal, ISITRIL. If you want to see me trying to model and the occasional day-to-day stuff, follow me on Instagram, same handle, ISITRIL. And if you want to see me reacting and having great conversations with people like Doug and other people around the world, hit my YouTube channel, which is my first name, Viddal, VIDDAL.
Well, as this boxing world evolves and changes, like we said, and we have more of these exhibitions and celebrity boxing and that type of thing, and we see some days we're gonna have to have you come back on and react to some of this as it's unfolding.
Yeah, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. I'm always down. I'm always down. When from day one, I want everyone that watches this, I want everyone to understand from day one, literally, I probably was in Vegas. Let's say day 3 to be exact. I probably landed in Vegas 3 days later at a title shoot. Most boxing equipment I've ever seen in my life in one room, and the most equipment I've ever been told I can keep.
Yeah.
So, and I don't forget those things, and I never will. And I appreciate you, Doug, and I appreciate the team. And you don't make me look better than I actually look in real life in these pictures.
Yeah.
So
I don't know about
shout
that.
out to everyone that helps with that process deserves a lot of credit.
Well, you know, Viddal, you're such a genuine, authentic guy, and you've surrounded yourself with such a perfect team in Jeff and Amir and Otis Pimpleton. That, I mean, you're just destined to do some great things when you surround yourself with a support system that's so well grounded. We're excited to see that next step.
Me too. I'm excited. And as I said, I'm excited to just make people and children here, the people that follow me here. It already happens. People already go on title websites, send me screenshots of the stuff they're buying because they see me modeling. I can't wait till they see me looking devastating in the ring wearing it. And then we can get people looking for these gloves.
Yeah.
You know, get people over here to go, no, these are the gloves. He wears those. And I can't wait to be in that position. Well,
you're going to make it look like $1 million in performance and in apparel.
Of course.
All right, Viddal. It's good seeing you. Cheers, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you for watching this episode of Title Unboxed. If you're anything like me, you can never get too much boxing. So if you'd like to watch more episodes, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and our Title Boxing YouTube page.